The police were still standing outside the house when she shot him. That is the detail that defines this entire case. Not the domestic violence history, not the 911 calls, not the jury's deliberations, or the mixed verdict, or the appeal that is still pending. The defining detail of the Quaneesha Johnson case is this. 2 DeKalb County police officers were on the front lawn of the home on Edenberry Lane in Lithonia, Georgia, when the shot was fired. They had been called there by Johnson herself. They had been standing outside, trying to mediate, trying to give the situation time to cool down, when a bullet ended Demonte Smith's life inside the house, and his dying words were heard before he collapsed on the lawn where they were standing. She hit me in the head with a metal thing and then shot me. Hurry before I die. He did not survive his injuries. He was 29 years old. This is 911 crime. Every source used in this video is linked in the description below. Check it yourself. That is how this channel works. This case has been debated across the internet since the night of November 27, 2022, and especially since the trial in August 2023. The debate is real and it is not simple. This is a case where a woman who had a history with a man who allegedly threatened her ended up convicted of manslaughter after shooting him while officers stood outside. It is a case where the defense argued she acted to protect herself and her children, and it is a case where the prosecution argued that the evidence showed something different. Not an act of survival, but an act of planning, executed in the minutes between a question asked of police officers and a trigger pulled inside a house. Both sides of that argument are real. Both deserve to be examined clearly, and that is what we are going to do. Before we walk through the timeline of November 26th and 27th, 2022, I want to tell you about both of the people at the center of this case, because one of them is alive and fighting her conviction, and one of them is not. Quaneesha Johnson was 30 years old at the time of the shooting. She lived in Lithonia, Georgia, in DeKalb County, a suburb of Atlanta. She had 3 children. Demonte Smith, 29, was the father of her youngest child. They had been in a relationship that had included incidents of domestic violence. She testified at trial. She told the jury what she said she had endured. Her defense attorney, Michael Sterling, argued to the jury that she acted to protect herself and her children. She killed Demonte Smith in an attempt to save the lives of herself and her children, Sterling told the court. 2 of her aunts testified that they had heard Smith threaten Johnson on the morning of November 27th, once on the phone before she arrived home, and once again as he went into the house. Demonte Smith was 29 years old. His mother, Bernetta Campbell, spoke at Johnson's sentencing. She said, "I know who my son was. Demonte was sweet and kind." She asked the judge for a sentence that reflected the loss of her son's life. The prosecution described Smith as a man who, in the critical minutes before his death, had already requested a rideshare to leave the home. His phone showed the app had been activated. He was trying to leave. He never made it out. Now let me walk you through the timeline. Because the sequence of events on November 26th and 27th is the most important thing in this case, and the sequence is documented in police records, body camera footage, and the testimony of the officers who were there. On the night of November 26, 2022, Johnson went out clubbing with friends. She left her 3 children with Demonte Smith at the home they shared on Edenberry Lane. She told Smith she would be back by 6 in the morning. She did not come back at 6. Smith began to worry. He called her several times. Her phone was off. He had heard earlier in the night that she and her friends had gotten into a fight at the club. He called members of her family. They began calling local hospitals and jails trying to find her. By the time Johnson returned home the following day, Smith had spent the night watching her children and searching for her. When she spoke to Smith by phone on the morning of November 27th, she told investigators that he threatened to hit her when she got home. That phone call is the origin of the self-defense argument. It is also the point at which Johnson called 911 not to report the threat, but to ask for a police escort to her own home. She did not want to walk into that house without law enforcement present. Officers arrived. Smith came outside. He and Johnson argued in front of the officers on the front lawn. The officers tried to mediate. By the accounts documented in the police reports and confirmed at trial, Johnson was combative with the officers and repeatedly talked over them during their attempts to de-escalate the situation. Eventually, the officers told both Johnson and Smith to go inside the house and calm down. They planned to give the pair a few minutes and then return to try to mediate again. As Johnson walked back toward the door to go inside, she turned to the officers and asked them a question. The exact words are in the record. She asked what would happen if she shot Smith in self-defense. And she told the officers that she had already looked up the self-defense law. She had already looked it up before she went inside, before the door closed, before the shot was fired. She had researched it. She told the officers who were standing on her lawn that she had done the research. And then she went inside. Officers remained on the scene. Within minutes, while they were still on the lawn, they heard the shot. They heard it from outside. And then Smith came out of the house. He was wounded. He was moving toward the officers, and the words he said as he approached them were captured by at least one officer's body camera. She hit me in the head with a metal thing and then shot me. Hurry before I die. Those are a dying man's words, spoken directly to police officers, captured on body camera, played for the jury at trial. The jury asked to watch that body camera footage again during deliberations. After the shooting, Johnson called 911. On that call, investigators say the sound of the gunshot could be heard, and Johnson could be heard repeatedly saying one word: bye. During the investigation, Johnson was questioned at DeKalb County Police Headquarters, and she made a statement that became one of the most significant pieces of evidence against her self-defense. She confessed that Smith had not hit her that day. She said he had not physically struck her on November 27, 2022. The threat had been verbal, she acknowledged. She also instructed one of her children during the incident to call 911 and tell officers that Smith had hit her. The child made that call. The instruction came from the mother. The child did what the mother asked. There is one more detail that the prosecution emphasized and that the defense could not fully account for. Smith had called a rideshare. He had opened the app and requested a car. He was waiting for a ride to leave that house. His phone documented the request and the time it was made. He was trying to go. He was not advancing on anyone. He was waiting for a car that was on its way when he was shot. The jury deliberated for nearly 4 hours. They asked to review the body camera footage again. They reviewed Johnson's recorded interviews with police, and they came back with a verdict that split the difference between the prosecution's theory and the defense's argument. Not guilty of malice murder, guilty of voluntary manslaughter, guilty of 2 counts of aggravated assault involving family violence, guilty of 2 counts of cruelty to children in the 3rd degree, guilty of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Not a murderer in the eyes of that jury, but not a person who acted in legally justified self-defense either. Voluntary manslaughter, the killing of another person under circumstances that would cause a reasonable person to act out of passion, without time to cool off, without the deliberation that distinguishes murder from manslaughter. At sentencing, the judge sentenced Johnson to 20 years, 5 years in prison, 5 years of house arrest, and 10 years of probation. The judge's words at sentencing became widely quoted. At some point, you will return home, but Smith will not, the judge told Johnson. Johnson remained out of prison on appeal bond. She went home to her children. She is currently serving her sentence outside of prison while her appeal proceeds through the Georgia courts. Her defense attorney has maintained that she acted to protect herself and her children from a man with a history of violence toward her, and that the conviction was unjust. The appeal is still active. The Georgia courts have not ruled on it, the case that divided the internet. What it has produced is a verdict, a sentence, and a set of documented facts that do not resolve cleanly into either narrative that was offered to the jury. She asked the officers what would happen if she shot him in self-defense. She told them she had already looked up the law. She told her child to call 911 and say he had hit her. She said in her police interview that he had not hit her that day. He had called a rideshare. He was waiting to leave. He said as he walked toward the officers who were still standing on the lawn, "Hurry before I die." And she said on the 911 call that captured the aftermath one word, "Bye." The appeal is pending. When a ruling comes, 911 crime will be here. Every verified fact, every confirmed source used in this video is in the description below. Check it, share it. This is 911 Crime.